Okay, it's about 5:30 a.m. This is David Wade Harris, and this is where I work. I come out here usually 5:30, 6 o'clock a.m. every morning. I work about 12 hours every day. I'm out here in my shop. I am a engraver for a living, and I engrave on firearms and watches. I don't get out to trade shows anymore to kind of show folks how my work is done, so I figured I'd make this video. I think this is the world we live in nowadays. People look at YouTube and different things to see how folks work. That sign is telling the truth. My whole property is under several different video cameras, okay? Now, this is my shop. This desk right here is where I do shipping and catch-all. I try to keep it fairly clean for shipping. Got a few shelves. It's a small shop, so I have to utilize every corner. That's my boxes for shipping and other stuff. This is where I start in the morning. This is my coffee. Gotta have that. This desk is designated for working on watches. I do not take movements out of watches. I only remove the bracelets and the clasps and prep them for engraving on the cases and the bracelets and things like that. And then I also put the black dye, resin epoxy in the background. Anyway, I use that desk for watches. Little shelf above it, little drawers to store things in, okay? This is the next desk in my shop. This is where I drink my coffee and study in the mornings. I do spend a little time with me and the Lord alone every morning. It's a good thing to do. That's my computer for printing and doing just paperwork. I don't get on the internet with that. It's just an old computer, but it's very good. Anyhow, cutting paper, whatever. Little paper. Little catch-all corner. I think every shop probably has a catch-all corner. All right. You can see my wall has pictures of different fellows that I've worked for through the years. I have been engraving since the early 80s, about 1985 or so. And this is 2021, so I've been doing it for a while. This desk, I have to say, is very special to me. This is the desk that Weldon Bledsoe used when he was engraving. This was his personal desk. That is a picture of Weldon Bledsoe on the desk, just for me, so I can remember where I came from. Very gentle, great man, very kind, taught me to engrave out of the goodness of his heart, didn't charge me anything. This vise that you see in the picture is this vise right here. That was Weldon Bledsoe's vise that he would engrave guns in. And this one also is his vise. It's a little smaller, and he used that one. And there's another small vise around here somewhere that was his as well. This was Weldon's hammer. You can see his thumbprint actually worn into the handle right there. He was a very talented man. These are just some of the tools that came with the desk that were his tools that he used, and I still use them myself. Now, his family was very kind to allow me to have this desk, and I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. It's sentimental. But my desk is the one in the back. That's my vise back there. You can see there's lights hanging from the ceiling kind of randomly, and desk lights and different things. Lighting is key. You can't see, you can't engrave. And like I said, this is a shop, so I use this shop day in, day out. This is where I make my living, doing hand engraving on metal, whether it be guns or watches, car parts. This is my shop. And like I say, I just want to kind of introduce you to it. I used to get out and trade shows, like I say, and I would show folks how I would engrave, but I hadn't done that in 20 years. This is my vise for holding work. This vise weighs about 40 pounds. And anyhow, introduce you to just a few of the tools. This is my hammer that I use for hammering, obviously chiseling. These are two of the chisels that I do for gold inlay. This is a burnishing tool This tool here I use for push engraving. A lot of these tools are handmade. I make that myself there. I draw with that. These are for measuring. This is for drawing. This is for working the background, getting it, prepping it and drawing. That's just beeswax. Some tools that I've made through the years, handmade tools made out of good carbon steel drill stocks, what most folks call it. And this is powder for drawing, a little torch for heating, some Dremel tool heads for polishing and cleaning. Okay, the plastic heated up, and it's for holding watches and small parts for engraving. You put them in the vise. I'll demonstrate that later on. These are tools, some of the tools that I use. These are made from, a lot of these are made from drill stock, background tools. Mr. Bledsoe taught me how to do this. These are not nails. That's actually mushroom from hammering on it. Okay, this one is, I've utilized one of the more modern holding devices. The tool that I do the work with is this down on the end that's screwed in there. That's just a homemade tool for doing background work, okay? And I welded it onto a piece of key stock so I could hammer on it. This is my liner for doing lines. Hammer on that as well. Little hammer. This tool here I make myself also. Mr. Bledsoe taught me how to do this. This is a piece of key stock with a lathe blank. This one is probably a Momax Cobalt lathe blank. I use carbide and just high-speed steels. But anyway, it's welded into the end of that. I drill a hole, stick that in there, and then weld it in with silver solder. And that's my chisel. When I sharpen it on down and it gets too short, then I will replace it and make another one. Here's one that I've used for years that finally got too short. I finally retired this one. You see it's kind of magnetized, okay. And so I do a lot of it that way. This is where I sharpen those tools. This is a steel plate that's got diamond dust embedded in it. This is how I hold the angle so that I sharpen it. This is my magnification. I would love to try one of the magnifiers. What do they use? The microscopes. A lot of these guys are using microscopes nowadays. I wouldn't mind trying one of those. I just never have yet. Like I say, I've been engraving since the early 80s. This is 2021, so 30 years or so. However you figure that. 40 almost, I guess. I'm getting old. And I just want to introduce you to some of my tools. And I will show you how they work later on in another video. This is a more modern tool that I use for when I started doing watches, which I started doing watches about 4 years ago. Once I make all my cuts, I'll take this high-speed grinder and remove that background deep enough to put that black dye in. And these are some of the tools that, little rotary tools that go in that. Well, and I use that for the sake of the watch. That is easier on the watch, less shock. Actually, no shock at all. Otherwise, I would use a hammer and chisel to remove that background. And I have when I first started. But I thought, that's pretty hard banging around on those watches with a hammer and chisel. So I bought that for the sake of the watch. And it does a better job, actually. I do not shun anybody for using modern tools. I don't believe in laser engraving. I do shun that because that's really not hand engraving. But these fellas that are using the air tools, they do a great job. Nothing wrong with it. It is still hand engraving. It's just that I was taught by a man that predated all of that. There were no air tools when Weldon Bledsoe was engraving. And he made me say I would not use any modern tools or he wouldn't teach me. And so I'm trying to keep that tradition alive. He didn't have air tools. All he had was a hammer and various chisels to do his work with. And like I say, he graciously and very kind, he taught me how to do the old-fashioned engraving. And so that's just how I do it. That's how I work. And this is where I work. My name is David Wade Harris. You can say Master Engraver if you want to. I just say this is how I make a living, and this is where I work, and I'll make other videos demonstrating how I work in the future. Thank you for watching.